Let's have a look at the all-important accounting process known as the double entry system. When entering information into the ledger, there are a few important points to remember when recording the business transactions. First of all, you need to ask yourself, what is the effect of the transaction going to be on the basic accounting equation, or the BAE? Identify the accounts involved. Determine which should be debited and which should be credited. Ensure that the debited amount is always equal to the credited amount. Always indicate the date of the transaction. Indicate the name of the contra ledger account. And indicate the folio number of the subsidiary journals. So let's have a look at a few practical examples using the double entry system. In our first example, we'll have a look at transactions affecting the assets and interests using the basic accounting equation. Firstly, let's have a look at a capital contribution to the business. J. Peterson withdraws 100,000 Rand from his personal bank account and deposits it as a capital investment into the enterprise Thomson Shipping. So the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the effect of the transaction going to be on the basic accounting equation? So firstly, we know that this was a financial injection into the business. And we know that this is an asset. Secondly, we know that this was a capital contribution, and capital affects the equity of the business. And lastly, when we have a look at liabilities, we know that this was not a liability, because liabilities deal with financial transactions that affect the business in a negative manner. And we know that this was not the case. Secondly, we need to identify the accounts involved. So we know that this was a monetary value that was deposited into our bank account. And secondly, we know that this was a capital investment. Next, we need to ensure that the debited amount equals the credited amount. So assets always increase on the debit side, and equity always increases on the credit side. So now we can make sure that under bank, on the debit side of the ledger, we have 100,000 Rand, and this is equal to 100,000 Rand on the credit side of the ledger. And then, of course, we need to remember that when entering these into the ledger, we must always indicate the date of the transaction, indicate the name of the contra ledger account, which in this case, under bank, we would make a reference to capital, and capital, we would make a reference to its contra ledger account, in this case being bank. And then we must always indicate the folio number of the subsidiary journal. In our next example, we'll have a look at the acquisition of a loan. So Thomson Shipping obtains a loan from Second National Bank for 30,000 Rand. So the first question we need to ask ourselves again is, what is the effect of the transaction on the basic accounting equation? We know that this was 30,000 Rand coming into the business, and this is of course an asset. This doesn't affect any of the equity in the business at this stage. And then we know that a loan is a liability because it is money that we owe somebody else. Then we need to identify the two accounts involved. The first one is obviously bank, as it is money coming into the business. And then the second account involved is a loan account, in which we must always also specify the name of the creditor. Then we need to ensure that the debited amount equals the credited amount. So assets, as we know, increase on the debit side. Liabilities always increase on the credit side. And then we make sure that the two amounts are the same on either side. And then, as always, remember the date of the transaction, the name of the ledger account, and the folio number of the subsidiary journal.